look, we are looking at a specific section of the lexicon of rhetorical artistry. And to be precise, and I know this part sounds like we're about to read a medical dictionary or something, we are covering figures of speech numbers, 91 through 120. When I first glanced at this list, I saw words like hypozeuxis, catachresis, aposiopesis. My first thought literally was, is this contagious?
Yeah, they do sound like rare tropical diseases, don't they? Like, I'm afraid you've been diagnosed with chronic polysyndeton?
Exactly. But once you get past those Greek labels, which frankly feel a little bit like gatekeeping, you realize what this list actually is. It is a manual on how to hack human perception using absolutely nothing but sentence structure. We aren't talking about what you say to someone. We're talking about the geometry of how you say it to force them to feel a specific emotion or, accept a specific logic.
Right, and that is the crucial distinction here. Most people obsess over their arguments, the data, the bullet points, the logic. They think the content is king. But this section of the lexicon argues that the container of the argument matters just as much, if not more.
The container. I like that.
Yeah, because if you use figure 94, which is a syndeton, you sound like a decisive, unstoppable leader. But if you use figure 93 polysyndeton, you sound like you're bearing the weight of the entire world on your shoulders. The actual words you're saying could be identical, but the structural container changes the psychological impact completely.
And that's exactly our mission for this deep dive. We aren't here to memorize definitions so you can go win a Scrabble game or impress a librarian. We are going to reverse engineer these tools. I want to know why a certain sentence structure makes me automatically trust a politician, and why another one makes me want to buy a car I definitely can't afford. We're stripping the magic away from persuasion and just looking at the mechanics.
We're looking under the hood, and figures 91 through 120 are particularly interesting because they really cover the extremes of the human experience. We have tools for logical entrapment, tools for emotional manipulation, and tools for what I can really only call weaponized silence.
Oh, weaponized silence is a great phrase. We're going to cover how to insult someone by explicitly not insulting them, which is a personal favorite of mine. We'll look at why "and" is basically the most dangerous word in the English language if you use it 5 times in a row. And we'll ask if there's actually such a thing as plain speech, or if everything we say is just a performance. But I want to start with the rhythm.
Yeah, rhythm is fundamental. It's the heartbeat of persuasion. If you don't control the time, your audience just drifts.
Right, because before you can persuade someone, you have to control the clock. And the source kicks this off with 2 terms that are polar opposites, which I love because it shows the range of the tool set right away. We have polysyndeton and asyndeton, figures 93 and 94. They honestly sound like twin transformers.
They really do, and they function in completely opposite ways to control your perception of speed. Let's start with polysyndeton, figure 93. The definition is simple. It's the deliberate use of more conjunctions, usually the word "and", than is grammatically necessary.
The example they give in the source is, we have ships and men and money and courage.
Now, pause for a second there. How would a normal, efficient editor or, grammar software tell you to write that sentence?
Oh, they'd tell me to use commas. So it'd be, we have ships, men, money, and courage.
Correct. That is the standard English list. It groups the items into a single bundle. It basically says, here's our inventory, all in one neat box. But polysyndeton breaks the bundle, ships and men and money and courage.
It just feels, I don't know, heavier. It forces you to stop at every single item. It's almost like climbing a set of stairs where every single step is incredibly high.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. By inserting that "and", you are resetting the listener's attention span for every single item. You're completely refusing to let them group the concepts together. So this creates a sensation of multiplicity. It feels like there is more stuff there than there actually is. It creates a massive cognitive load.
So it's the difference between a grocery list and a complaint. Like if I say to myself, okay, I need to clean the garage, walk the dog, and call a bank, that's just a plan. But if I say to my spouse, I have to clean the garage and walk the dog and call the bank, I'm not listing tasks anymore. I'm complaining about my burden.
You're emphasizing the labor. You're dragging out the time. The Bible actually uses this constantly. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. It creates this sense of majesty, an overwhelming scale. It slows the heartbeat of the reader down. It forces you to just dwell on the magnitude of the city.
Wow. Okay, so polysyndeton's the brake pedal. It adds weight. Now let's look at the accelerator, which is asyndeton, figure 94, the omission of conjunction.
The classic example of this is arguably the most famous quote in history. I came, I saw, I conquered. Julius Caesar.
Right. And no, what isn't there? He didn't say, I came and then I saw and finally I conquered.
Which would have been the Polysynoton version. I came and I saw and I conquered.
If he said that, it would sound like he was just exhausted. Like, I came and then I saw and then, oh God, I had to conquer.
Exactly. It sounds like a ton of work. But I came, I saw, I conquered strips away all the effort. It removes the time between the actions entirely. It basically implies that the seeing and the conquering were practically simultaneous. So ascendanton creates this illusion of speed and inevitability.
It sounds kind of arrogant in a good way, I mean.
It is absolutely the grammar of arrogance. It suggests that there was zero friction, no and was needed because literally nothing stood in the way. If you are a CEO reporting record profits, you want ascendant. We innovated, we executed, we delivered. You don't want and suggests you had to pause and think about it.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So if I want to overwhelm someone with how much I've done or how much suffering I've endured, I use polysynonym, the brakes. If I want to impress them with how easy it was or how decisive I am, I use ascendanton, the gas pedal.
Precisely. You are manipulating their perception of the timeline using nothing but the presence or absence of a tiny three-letter word. That is true rhetorical artistry.
That brings us to another structural tool, which is figures 92 and 112. And the source actually lists this one twice, which I'm assuming means it's super important, isocolon.
It is arguably the most seductive figure of speech in the book. Isocolon is using clauses of equal length and structure. The prefix iso just means equal.
So the Caesar quote we just talked about, I came, I saw, I conquered, that's also an isocolon, right?
Yeah.
Because it's 3 parts, same length, subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb.
Yes, exactly. And figure 112 gives another great example. Many will enter, few will succeed.
Why does that stick in our brains so much better than just saying, lots of people are going to try, but not many will make it?
Because the human brain is essentially a pattern recognition. We absolutely crave balance. When we hear a sentence that is perfectly balanced, many will enter, few will succeed, it just sounds right to our ear. It has a rhythm. And here is the truly dangerous part. Because it sounds structurally sound, we subconsciously assume the idea itself is sound.
Wait, walk me through that. You're saying we actually trust a sentence more just because it has a symmetrical beat to it.
Absolutely. It's what Keats meant when he wrote, beauty is truth, In the realm of rhetoric, if it sounds beautiful and balanced, we naturally assume it is true. Marketing slogans live and die by Isaac Kamen. Think about it. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. Balance. It creates a profound sense of inevitability. It feels more like a law of physics than just an opinion.
That is wild. We are absolute suckers for rhythm. Basically, if you can make your lie symmetrical, people will just believe it.
That is the dark side of isocolon, yes. It totally disguises opinion as fact through the vehicle of balance.
Okay, so isocolon is all about balance and blending things together smoothly. But what if we want to do the exact opposite? What if we want to break the flow on purpose? We have hypozeuxis, figure 91.
Right. Hypozeuxis is the anti-blend. The strict definition is that each clause has its own distinct subject and verb. So the example is, she runs, he jumps, they swim.
It kind of sounds like a children's book, like See Spot Run.
It can, yeah, but in a rhetorical context, it creates extreme clarity. It separates the actions. Instead of saying, she runs while he jumps and they swim, which blends the whole scene into one picture, hypozeuxis forces you to look at each actor individually. It's like a rapid-fire montage in a movie. Cut to her running, cut to him jumping, cut to them swimming.
It isolates the action. I can see how that would be super useful for setting a tense scene or maybe listing distinct grievances against someone like, you lied, you cheated, you stole.
Perfect example. That hits way harder than you lied, cheated, and stole. It lands with more impact because each action stands totally alone. You are forced to confront the lying, then confront the cheating, then confront the stealing as entirely separate offenses.
And then on the flip side of structure, we have figure 111, which is hyperbaton. This one sounds like a sci-fi weapon, like fire the hyperbaton.
It really does sound futuristic, but it's actually very ancient and highly poetic. Hyperbaton is using unusual word order for emphasis. The example given in the lexicon is, sweet is the night.
Instead of just, the night is sweet.
Exactly. Standard English represents a subject-verb-adjective order, right? The night is sweet. When you invert that to sweet is the night, you are deliberately moving the adjective to the very front. Now, why would you do that?
Well, to spotlight the sweetness. You're hitting the audience with the emotion first.
Yes. You emphasize the quality rather than the object itself. It's often associated with poetry, or as pop culture loves to point out, Yoda from Star Wars. Strong is the Force.
Pass the salt you must.
Right, right. But it's really not just for Jedi Masters. You hear it in political speeches, too. Great is the challenge before us. It elevates the tone immensely. It sounds formal, maybe a bit archaic, and very important. If you walk into a typical office meeting and say, good as the quarterly report, people might look at you funny, but they will definitely. It signals that what is being said is not mundane, it's significant.
It definitely creates a sense of occasion. Okay, so that's the rhythm section of our deep dive. We can speed things up, slow them down, balance them out beautifully, or completely twist the order. Now I want to move to section 2 of our outline, which I'm very excited about. It's the art of not saying it.
Oh, this is where things get truly manipulative. This is the passive-aggressive section of the rhetorician's toolkit.
I love this stuff. Let's talk about paralipsis and apophysis, figures 96 and 101.
They are very similar mechanisms. They both involve emphasizing something by explicitly claiming that you are not going to mention.
The example for paralipsis is, I won't even talk about his mistakes. And for apophysis, it's, I won't bring up his bad habits.
It is the absolute classic, I'm taking the high road maneuver, while simultaneously dragging the other person right through the mud.
It's so brilliant, though. Because if I say, I'm not going to mention my opponent's DUI arrest because I really want to focus on policy, I have just mentioned the DUI arrest.
Exactly. And you've done it with a perfect shield of deniability. If someone calls you out on it later, you just say, what? I said I wouldn't talk about it. It securely plants the negative idea in the listener's mind, but you don't have to take any responsibility for it. It is an absolute favorite of politicians during debates.
But isn't there a risk there? Doesn't the audience usually realize what you're doing?
Sometimes they do. But psychologically, it exploits what we call the white bear effect. If I tell you right now, do not think of a white bear, what do you immediately think of?
A white bear, yeah.
Exactly. By verbally negating the topic, you actually prioritize it in the listener's working memory. You make them focus on it more than if you had just said it normally. It also makes the audience feel like they're sharing a dirty little secret with you.
That's insidious. Then we have ways of talking entirely around a subject. Figure 105 is periphrasis.
Periphrasis is using much longer phrasing instead of just a simple word. The classic everyday example is saying, he passed away, instead of he died.
So euphemisms basically fall into this category.
Yes, they do. It's very often used to soften a blow. We use periphrasis when the direct word feels too harsh, too vulgar, or just too simple. So instead of saying, I got fired, you might say, I am currently transitioning between career opportunities.
Or the classic corporate, the company is undergoing a restructuring of its human capital.
Precisely. It acts as a cognitive buffer. It distances both the speaker and the listener from the gritty reality of the situation. But it can also be used just to sound more grand. Instead of saying the ocean, you say the watery deep. It inflates the language artificially.
And then there's figure 95, which is hendiades. This one is kind of tricky. The example is sound and fury.
Hendiades is fascinating, and it's very subtle. It comes from the Greek, meaning 1 through 2. You express one complex idea using two distinct words connected by and. So the example, sound and fury, comes from Shakespeare's Macbeth. It essentially implies furious sound.
So why not just say furious sound then? What's the actual benefit of splitting it up like that?
Because if you say furious sound, it makes furious just a descriptor. It's just an adjective. It's secondary to the sound itself. But when you say sound and fury, you turn the emotion, the fury, into a noun. You give it equal weight and actual physical substance to the sound. It makes the anger feel like a tangible physical object.
Oh, I see. It feels more elemental, like saying we went out into the rain and weather instead of just rainy weather.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. It separates the elements to make you feel both of them. It slows down the comprehension just enough to add gravity to the statement. It's a very poetic, subtle.
Okay, what about when we just stop? Like completely stop. We have anapodoton, which is figure 113, and aposiopesis, figure 1.
These are the figures of silence. Anapodoton is leaving a sentence deliberately incomplete, usually implying some. The example they give is, if only I had.
It's the classic cliffhanger.
It creates immense suspense. It actively invites the listener to fill in the blank. If only I had listened to my mother, or bought that stock, or turned left. By not saying it, you literally force the listener to imagine the consequence. And usually their imagination is way more vivid and more terrible than whatever words you would have actually said.
That makes sense. And aposiopesis.
Very similar, but aposiopesis is usually more about an abrupt break caused by overwhelming emotion or sudden hesitation. I'll tell you what I think, but
It's the rhetorical equivalent of hold me back.
exactly. Or it's the moment where you are so profoundly angry or so sad you literally cannot get the words out. It signals to the audience that the emotion is simply too big for language to contain. It's extremely dramatic. You see it in reality TV and soap operas all the time. I love you, but I just can't. And then fade to black.
It effectively transfers the emotional labor right over to the audience.
Yeah.
You have to finish the sentence for you.
Correct. It engages the listener's active participation. You aren't just broadcasting at them anymore. You are asking them to complete the thought.
Which actually leads us perfectly into section 3, persuasion, logic, and wisdom. Because making the audience do the work really seems to be a recurring theme here. Let's talk about the enthymeme, figure 102.
The enthymeme. This is the ultimate logic trap. It is a syllogism, a logical argument, but with an implied premise. The lexicon's example is, he's a citizen, so he has rights.
Okay, let's unpack that logic for a second. A normal full syllogism would be, premise 1, all citizens have rights. Premise 2, he's a citizen. Conclusion, therefore he has rights.
Right, that's the full math written out. But in an enthymeme, we just skip the first part entirely. We just say, he's a citizen, so he has rights. We just assume the audience already firmly believes that all citizens have rights.
Why is that better than spelling it out, though? Why hide the foundational premise?
Because the hidden premise is very often where the weakness of the argument lives, or conversely, it's where the strongest bias lives. If I say to you, I wouldn't trust him, he's a politician.
The hidden premise there is, obviously, politicians are untrustworthy.
Exactly. Now, if I said that out loud, if I said, I'm not trusting him because all politicians are untrustworthy, you might actively argue with me. You'd say, wait a minute, that's a massive generalization. Some politicians are honest.
But because you didn't say...
Sure, because I didn't say it, your brain literally skips the step of auditing the premise. You just focus on the conclusion. The enthymeme relies on the audience to fill in the blank. And when the audience fills in the blank themselves, they feel smart. They feel like they are naturally on the exact same page as you. They become utterly complicit in the argument.
That is incredibly sneaky. It flatters the listener while completely bypassing their critical thinking skills. It creates this false bond of common sense between the speaker and the listener.
Sneaky but highly effective. It turns the audience into your silent co-author.
Okay, what about prolepsis? Figure 103.
Yeah.
Honestly, this one sounds like a medical procedure.
Prolepsis is what I like to call the Eminem and 8 Mile strategy. It is anticipating an objection and answering it before your opponent can even bring it up.
Right, so the example in the book is, some may say I'm too young, but I have experience.
By stating the objection yourself, some may say I'm too young, you take the weapon right out of their hands. If your opponent later gets up and says he's too young, the audience immediately thinks, old news, he already addressed that.
You're stealing their thunder. You're basically inoculating the audience against the counterargument before it happens.
Exactly. And inoculation theory is a real, documented psychological concept. By giving a weak version of the counterargument yourself, you actively build up the audience's resistance to the real attack later. It shows immense confidence. I know exactly what you're thinking, and here is why you're wrong, before you even open your...
That's powerful. Now let's move to the wisdom section. How do we structure sentences to just sound like we know everything? We have diatyposis, gnomic statement, epiphonema, and aletheia.
This is the guru toolkit. Let's look at diatyposis first, figure 99. This is giving explicit moral instruction or advice. Always treat others the way you want to be treated.
The golden rule. It instantly establishes the speaker as a mentor figure.
Right. Then you have the gnomic statement, figure 100. This is expressing a general truth or principle. Honesty is the best policy.
Or, a penny saved is a penny earned.
Yes. These are explicitly designed to sound timeless. Notice the grammar they use. They almost exclusively use the present tense. They don't say honesty was the best policy yesterday. They say honesty is. It claims absolute universality. When you use a gnomic statement, you aren't arguing a point. You are stating the laws of the universe.
It totally shuts down debate. You can't really argue with a proverb. It feels ancient and undeniable.
Precisely. And if you want to end your whole speech with a bang, you use epiphonema, figure 109. This is a maxim or summary statement placed at the very end of a discourse. Thus, honesty always triumphs.
It's the rhetorical mic drop.
It wraps everything up in a neat little bow. It tells the audience, here is the final takeaway, here's what you need to remember. It signals that the thinking portion is done. Now is the time for accepting.
And finally, in this group, aletheia, figure 119. This one sounds pretty cool.
Aletheia is actually the Greek word for unhiding or truth. As a figure of speech, it's explicitly expressing truth or revealing reality, often positioning yourself as cutting through the noise. The example is, the harsh truth is that we must adapt.
It's that moment when the speaker seemingly drops the facade, like, look, I'm going to level with you here.
It's a rhetorical claim to stark realism. By labeling your statement the harsh truth, you are inherently implying that everyone else is lying or sugarcoating things, but you are the only one brave enough to say it exactly like it is. It builds immense trust, or at least the potent illusion of trust.
I'm the only one telling you the facts. That is potent stuff. But let's shift gears entirely to section 4. Drama, humor, and high emotion. Because sometimes you don't want to be logical at all, you just want to be purely emotional.
And absolutely nothing creates emotion quite like repetition. The source gives us 4 different ways to repeat things: epimone, polylogy, exergasia, and symplos.
Okay, let's break them down one by one. Epimone, figure 98.
Epimone is the frequent repetition of a phrase or a question. How could this happen? How could this happen?
It sounds like pure panic or deep grief.
It creates what we call a dwelling effect. You are stuck in the emotion. You literally can't move past it. It forces the listener to feel that exact stuckness with you. It's not about moving the argument forward. It's about digging a deeper hole in the exact same spot.
Then we have polylogy, figure 117.
Polylogy is the repetition of a single word or phrase for emphasis, usually immediate. The lexicon's example is alone, alone, all alone.
That's very poetic. That's Coleridge, right? Alone, alone, all alone. Alone on a wide, wide sea.
Yes, exactly. It hammers the specific word. By saying alone 3 times in a row, the loneliness actively compounds. It becomes heavier with each repetition. It's like striking a bell a second time before the sound of the first strike has even faded.
Wow. Then we have exergasia, figure 120. This one is really interesting to me. It's repeating the idea, but completely changing the words.
The example is, freedom is precious, freedom is invaluable, freedom is essential.
I mean, you're basically just using a thesaurus at that point. Is that actually considered a rhetorical figure?
It is, and it's highly effective in practice. You are hammering the exact same nail, but with different hammers. It shows the multifaceted nature of the concept. It allows you to explore the idea from slightly different angles while keeping the audience's focus laser-locked on the subject. It feels relentless. It just doesn't let the audience look away from the core concept of freedom.
And then the boss level of repetition. Symplos, figure 114.
Symplos is a structural combination of anaphora, which is repetition at the start, and epiphora, repetition at the end. The example is, when there's talk of hatred, let us stand against hatred.
So you basically sandwich the entire sentence with the same word.
Or the exact same phrases. Much is given and much is expected. It creates a closed loop. It physically locks the sentence structure firmly in place. It sounds incredibly oratorical and formal. If you want to sound like a president or a historic civil rights leader, you use symplos.
It feels very destined. Like hatred inevitably leads to hatred. It's inescapable. It sounds almost like a royal decree.
Now, what if we want to dramatically spike the emotion without relying on repetition? We have enthusiasm, figure 108.
Which is just what? Being enthusiastic.
Rhetorically speaking, yes. It is using language to express overwhelmingly strong emotion or zeal. Let us rise and fight for freedom. It's the classic locker room pep talk. It's pure inspiration, totally designed to bypass logic and hit the adrenaline center of the brain directly.
And then we have catachresis, figure 110. This is actually one of my absolute favorites because it's technically wrong.
Catachresis is the deliberate, calculated misuse of words for effect. The example is, I will speak daggers to her.
Right, because daggers are physical objects. You can't literally speak a dagger. You can throw a dagger or, stab someone with a dagger.
Exactly. A strict grammarian would cross it out and say, that's incorrect. But rhetorically, it is pure brilliant. Because saying, I will speak hurtfully to her is just weak. I will speak dagger conveys the actual physical pain of the words. It creates a violently vivid image in the mind.
It kind of shocks the brain, right?
Yes. Because the categories simply don't fit together speech and cutlery, the brain has to work a split second harder to reconcile them. That tiny spark of cognitive dissonance is exactly what makes the image so unforgettable. It's a literal violation of language that creates an entirely new meaning.
That's very similar to hypokatastasis, right?
Yeah.
Figure 118. This is an implied comparison, but without using like or as.
Right, so it's not you're like a snake. Using like allows for distance. It's simply you're a snake. It creates absolute identity. It conceptually transforms the subject into the object. It's easily the most forceful type of metaphor you can possibly use.
It's usually an insult then, or maybe a really strong compliment like you're an angel.
Yes. It doesn't cautiously invite a comparison. It forcefully states a fact of identity.
Let's lighten the mood a little bit here. Let's talk about humor and plot twists.
Oh.
Bathos, figure 106.
Bathos is the sudden, jarring drop from the deadly serious to the completely trivial. He spent his entire life fighting for justice, then tripped over a rock.
It's the essence of comedy. The setup is super high and lofty, and the punchline is just low.
It instantly deflates the tension. It's used to mock the seriousness of a situation or just to get a reliable laugh out of the audience. It is the ultimate anticlimax.
And anagnorisis, figure 104. Honestly, this one sounds like a Harry Potter spell.
It comes straight from Greek tragedy. It means recognition. It's the profound moment of discovery. Oedipus realizes the horrific truth about his parents.
Oh, it's the Luke, I am your father moment.
Exactly. In rhetoric, you can use this by carefully structuring a story or an argument where you dramatically reveal a key piece of information right at the end that totally changes the meaning of everything that came before it. It creates a massive shockwave for the listener. It essentially rewrites the past.
And finally for this section, one for all word nerds out there, paranomasia, figure 116.
The humble pun. Time flies like an arrow. Fruit flies like a banana.
I love this example so much because it genuinely breaks your brain for a second when you read it.
It fully relies on the structural ambiguity of the English language. In the first half, flies is a verb and like is a preposition. But in the second half, flies suddenly becomes a noun, the insect, and like becomes the verb to enjoy.
Fruit flies, like a banana.
It forces the brain to rapidly, almost violently, switch context. That tiny little spark of confusion instantly followed by understanding. That is exactly where the humor comes from. It's a cognitive tickle.
It's incredibly clever. It really shows a mastery of the language. Okay, we're heading into the final stretch of our outline here. Section 5, balancing the good and bad. Because obviously life isn't always black and white.
We have antanagoge, an apology, to round us out.
Antanagoge, figure 97. The car is expensive, but it's worth every penny.
This is universally known as the salesman's best friend. You openly admit the negative, the car is expensive, which instantly makes you sound reasonable and honest, but you immediately pivot to the positive, worth every penny.
You balance the negative with a much stronger positive. The work is hard, but the reward is great.
It beautifully softens the blow. If you just walked up and said, the car is expensive, the customer leaves. If you just say, it's worth every penny, they might not believe you. It sounds like empty hype. But putting them together, it creates a perfectly balanced value proposition. It makes the negative feel like the necessary, unavoidable cost of the positive.
And finally, apology, figure 107. But to be clear, this is not just saying, I'm sorry.
No, not at all. In strict rhetoric, an apology is a formal defense. Think of Plato's Apology of Socrates. He certainly wasn't saying sorry for corrupting the youth. He was systematically explaining why he did exactly what he did. The example for modern usage is, I may be wrong, but hear me out.
It's totally disarming.
It deliberately lowers the listener's defenses. If you aggressively start by saying, I am absolutely right, people immediately put their guard up. If you softly say, look, I might be totally crazy here, but people lean in. They want to see if you're actually crazy. It functionally buys you permission to speak. It feigns humility just to gain an audience.
Wow, okay. We have just sprinted or maybe ran a full marathon through 30 entirely different ways to manipulate, persuade, and structurally hack language. From the satisfying rhythm of isocolon to the emotional spike of catachresis to the sneaky logic trap of the enthymia.
It is a massive amount to take in all at once.
But bringing it all together, what does this actually mean for us? If I'm just a regular listener going about my day, Why should I care about distinguishing between aposiopesis and anapodoton?
You probably don't need to memorize the specific Greek names, unless you really want to show off at a dinner party, which, go for it. But understanding the underlying mechanisms is absolutely crucial. These structures are literally the DNA of effective communication.
It's basically like having X-ray vision for conversation.
Exactly. Once you know what paralipsis is, you will start seeing it in literally every single political debate. You'll hear a candidate say, I don't want to talk about my opponent's scandal, and instead of just nodding along, your brain will click and you'll think, aha, manipulation. You are actively making me think about it by saying you won't.
Right. You stop being a passive consumer of language, and you start actively analyzing it in real time. You literally see the strings being pulled, you see the gears turning behind the words.
And, more importantly, you can start using them yourself. If you need to deliver some bad news at work, maybe you deliberately use periphrasis to soften the blow. If you need to deeply inspire your team on a project, maybe you use asyndeton to create a sense of urgent speed, or simplos to create a profound sense of sheer destiny. You have a tangible toolkit now. You are no longer unarmed in the daily war of words.
It just empowers you to be a much better speaker and a significantly sharper listener.
But I do want to leave us with a provocative final thought, going back to two specific figures we discussed today. Aletheia, which is truth, and catachresis, which is misuse.
Okay, let's unpack this to close out.
Aletheia claims to present the raw, completely unvarnished truth. The harsh reality is. But catachresis explicitly reminds us that language very often works best when we deliberately misuse it, when we do things like speak daggers or call people snakes to convey a deeper feeling.
So the question is rhetoric fundamentally about revealing the truth, or is it inherently about distorting it?
That is the eternal question of the lexicon. If we systematically strip away all of these figures, no rhythm, no metaphors, no irony, no structural tricks whatsoever, is there actually any plain language left? Or is human communication, by its very nature, an act of sheer artistry? Are we always painting a subjective picture rather than just taking an objective photograph?
That's deep. Is it even possible to just say something, or are we always on some level performing it?
I strongly suspect we are always performing, and the better you are at the mechanics of the performance, the more true it inevitably.
That is definitely something for you to mull over the next time you hear a speech that gives you goosebumps.
Just ask yourself,
Yeah.
am I genuinely moved by the facts, or am I just being moved by the figure of speech?
Usually I'd say it's the figure.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.